heard all these great things about it. You jumped in there after September 22nd of 2022, and then you hear all of this, and you're thinking, oh man, should I stick with this? So today we got a good topic. This is a topic that I know you wanted to speak about because it affects us personally and our customers as well. And that is LastPass. So there was a whole LastPass debacle, just call it that. And I'll let you get into more detail on that. And then comes the question, should I leave LastPass or should I quit LastPass? So let's get started with what happened. Yeah. What happened with LastPass?
Yeah. So LastPass announced a series of breaches, right? We got a couple different updates throughout 2022 that they had different problems. And what's been unfortunate is that at each announcement, what seems to have gone wrong has gotten worse. And this most recent announcement in December let us know that, unfortunately, a copy of the password vaults of their customers did get taken. And those vaults are encrypted, so that data is not visible. Your passwords are not visible for the attackers to see, but there is some data that is visible. And that data includes URLs to the websites that you were storing passwords for, amongst a few other things. But that's the most critical thing, because now, even though they don't have your passwords, they do know what sites you use, so they can see these are your banks, these are your credit card companies that you work with, etc. And so now what I'm concerned about, and what I think everybody at home should be concerned about, is the increased possibility that you will have highly directed phishing attacks come your way, so that people can actually spearfish you now and craft a very sophisticated email that looks just like a service you're a part of. Right? They can see your subscriptions and they can send something to you and really try to trick you into clicking that link and giving up credentials, because they now know where you shop, what gym you're a part of, and things like that. And so, unfortunately, that information that got leaked there is potentially very detrimental to your security. So that's kind of what's happened. There was a breach. Specifically, I want to say this: what they stole were backups of the vaults from, and I've got the date here, September 22nd. So I will say this: if you signed up for LastPass after September 22nd, 2022, you were not affected by this issue. So you're in the clear. But if you had an account with them before September 22nd, 2022, your information did get taken unless you were using federated logins with single sign-on. So if you had a federated login with your company with single sign-on, that vault is stored in a different location. They didn't get those backups. So, but if you were like a lot of people out there who just use the normal traditional sign-in, and you were before September 22nd of 2022, your information did get taken.
So essentially it's encrypted. So it's as if they took a bunch of safes, and then, whether or not they can get in the safes is probably another subject of conversation. But having those URLs, as we've talked about in some of our other podcasts, these phishing attacks, the more information they have about you, the better. Mm-hmm. So if they know the sites that you frequent, and they probably can, throw it in some kind of database that says, hey, like, these people are, everybody who is using X and Y bank, let's go after them. And kind of have it maybe isolated that way, or everyone who, has X, Y, and Z criteria, that's who we're going to focus on for now. So that's definitely makes sense to be aware of that for phishing attacks. So just briefly, and we won't get into this because we have other podcasts to talk about it, but what are a couple things that people might want to be aware of with these sort of phishing attacks being kind of looming or strong possibilities?
Yeah, nothing's really changed, right? You should, the best practice is still best practice. Don't click links that if somebody sends you a notification that says, hey, we need you to log in to reset your password, go ahead and browse directly to that website by opening up your web browser, Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Brave, whatever it is you use, Safari, and then go to your bank or your gym or whatever, your wherever you're headed. Go there directly by putting the URL in the search bar and then browse to it and then make the necessary changes if you need to. Don't click those links. Don't trust them. Just take the notification as, a possible attempt to phish you. And then if you want, a lot of those, are not true, right? A lot of times, Amazon's not, or the IRS, isn't probably emailing you saying, hey, we're about to arrest you. Go to this website and give me your social security number so you don't get arrested. That kind of stuff is still, common sense, right? But again, if you get an email and you're worried that it's phishing, which you should always be, just go ahead and browse directly to the site.
So great. That's awesome advice. And as always, you can check out our other videos for a little bit more in-depth guideline and advice on what to do to avoid phishing attacks. But let's get back to these encrypted vaults that we're wondering whether or not people can access. So what should be the concern there, or can that be accessed? Can that be broken into? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, good question. It can if you didn't follow best practice. So if you had a weak password that you used, by the way, some examples of some weak passwords. I want to say these because I bet a lot of people watching this use these passwords. Summer 2022, fall 2023, your name, your dog's name, anything with love, God. There's a bunch of really simple ones. Don't use those kind of passwords. You need randomly generated passwords or long passwords containing characters and numbers and symbols, special characters or symbols, and uppercase and lowercase. So, you can use phrase-based passwords still, right? You can use dictionary words, although it's even stronger if you don't use dictionary words. So if you just have a completely randomly generated password that is, not decipherable, or readable, human readable. But if you used a weak password, they have a copy of what's called the blob, right? That vault offline, and they can start brute forcing it over and over and over and over again. Now, if you had a strong password, 12 characters or more, randomly generated, they're not going to get in. It's going to take I forget how many millions of years. They're not going to do it. You're safe. Regardless, I do have some recommendations for what you should do. In fact, I've got 5 things that I recommend you do. Okay. The first is go ahead and change your LastPass master password. Just do it. Just to be safe, go ahead and change it. It's a good idea to change it periodically anyways. Now's the perfect time. Second thing is go in and change your passwords and your security questions and answers to your most critical websites in LastPass. So your banking information, your banking websites, anything to do with anything financial, stock trading accounts, stuff like that. Go in there, change that information, change those passwords, change your security questions. Your security questions, by the way, should never be the real answers to those questions anyhow. So when it says, what's your mother's maiden name? Your answer should not be your mother's maiden name. It should be something totally unrelated. And you should store that information in the notes field of your LastPass password for that website. Just put down the question and the actual answer that you've put down. But change that. The third thing is, if you haven't already, you've heard it 1,000 times, enable multi-factor authentication on your account. Should have already been enabled. Enable it now. This is it. Go do it. The fourth thing is you can increase your encryption iterations, right? So sort of the strength or the point is that this is going to make the entire platform stronger for you. So, and I'm just going to tell you briefly how to do it. Go to Open My Vault, go to Account Settings, go to Show Advanced Settings, go to Password Iterations. The default's going to be set at 100,100. Crank that thing up. You can go to 200,100, 300,100. Just ramp it up a bit. The fifth thing is be cautious, be vigilant, look out for phishing attempts, be on the lookout for the next year. You should always be vigilant, but especially for the next year, just be extra careful and cognizant of that. Okay. So there's my 5 recommendations for what you should do.
Nice. I like it. Nice, simple breakdown. So, just to kind of summarize and restate what we've been talking about here, LastPass was breached. A lot of customer data was exposed, right? Or accounts were exposed, and that left two different vulnerabilities, right? So the actual encrypted passwords, and that's one side of things, and then the other side of things is just them having the URLs of the accounts
Yeah,
that may have been in your possession. So
correct.
phishing, and then there's the five things that you talked about that'll
Yes.
help just in case that vault was compromised. So maybe that was my my weak attempt to summarize it. But Travis, should you leave LastPass? If you are new to LastPass, you heard all these great things about it, you jumped in there after September 22nd of 2022, and then you hear all of this, and you're thinking, oh man, should I stick with this? Or if maybe you were a loyal customer and you use LastPass for years, and now all this stuff happens, and your information, your accounts are compromised. What should you be thinking about doing?
Yeah.
Should you be leaving? Should you go somewhere else?
So maybe if this was the last straw for you, and I know there's a lot of people who were already irritated with LastPass as a company and as a product because of other things that they've done in the past, and because of who owns them now. Excuse me, log me in, and that group, their philosophy towards how they develop software isn't my favorite. I know there's some other people out there who don't love it either. But if you were already thinking of leaving, this is a good reason to go ahead and do it. But that said, I am not actually recommending at this time that people leave for a couple reasons. If you're familiar with the software, you know how to use it. The learning curve to getting to a new platform, you may not have the time or the energy right now to invest into it, and there's not a need to do it. You're not in a position where you have to leave LastPass to be safe. There's also, if the difficulty of moving your company, if this is something you're using commercially inside of your business, and LastPass has a good commercial offering. They have a really good commercial side to their service. You might be moving over to something that's non-commercial, that's not built towards businesses, and doesn't, have options like federated logins and single sign-on and things like that. So, if you're going to move, you've got to do a lot of research first. Maybe where you're at right now still makes sense. Okay. So I'm not recommending that you leave unless you were already thinking about leaving. Then go ahead. A couple people to look at, a couple of products to look at. Take a look at Bitward and take a look at 1Password. Those are two that I would recommend. I don't recommend the self-hosted stuff to most people. If you're highly technical and you know how to host your own password vault, go for it. But these videos we make for the most part are not for the most technically savvy people. They're mostly for business owners, right? For those guys, I wouldn't recommend the self-hosted stuff. It's just not within their wheelhouse. It's just not fair to for those people to have to deal with that level of complexity and have that technical knowledge. So I would still recommend, if you're going to leave, look at a hosted solution that would meet the needs of your company. Talk to your MSP, consult with them before you make any of these decisions, right? They might have strong opinions. Unfortunately, in the IT world, IT people tend to be really opinionated. If you're meeting somebody who's just saying, oh, you have to leave LastPass, get out of here, there's a good chance that they're not being particularly objective in their reasoning on this. They're just very passionate because they have their own personal biases. But that doesn't mean they're wrong. So talk to them, see what their reasons are, see where they recommend you go, make sure that their strategy aligns with what your needs are as a company. But should you leave? You don't have to leave. This might be a good time to look, but it's okay to stay. You're still safe for now. But I will tell you this: if LastPass has something like this happen again, I'm going to have reached my limit. I can tell you that right now. So as far as I'm concerned with LastPass, enough's enough. They got to take their security seriously. They got to stop having problems like this. The last thing I want to say about this is, if a breach was, if somebody having a breach was your criteria for choosing to leave them, you wouldn't be working with Microsoft. You wouldn't be working with Cisco. Okay. You wouldn't be working with Amazon. There's nobody out there you would work with. This does happen. It's a real risk. No one's immune. So I don't want to be overly harsh towards any business that has this happen to them. It's a horrible thing to have happen to their customers, but to them too. So I try to be reasonable and balanced. But I can tell you that with LastPass, enough's enough. They got to get their act together. And if it happened again, I'd be saying, okay, I'm ready to look elsewhere. We are at Simpleworks looking at other options just to make sure we have, not all our eggs in one basket, and we have choices for our customers, because I know there are a lot of people going forward from this point. They're not going to be comfortable with that solution, and they're going to want alternative solutions, and we're going to make sure that we have them available to them.
Awesome. Well summarized. That's a lot of good free information, as always, breaking it down, making IT simple. And we didn't forget, it's been a while, but we still want to do our 30 seconds or less. And this is a lot to summarize because we did cover a lot. And we're going to break it into two parts. Whole deal that happened with LastPass. What should you do to stay safe against phishing attempts, and to make sure that your passwords, that your accounts are protected now? And then the second thing is, should you leave LastPass? Travis, you got 30 seconds.
Okay, so what you need to do is change your LastPass master password, change your security questions and passwords for your most important sites. You need to turn on multi-factor authentication. You need to increase your LastPass encryption iterations, and you need to be vigilant about phishing. Okay. Second thing, should you leave? You don't need to leave. You're still safe where you are, but this might be a good reason to leave if you were already upset.
Wow. That was a good one. I think that only took you about 15 seconds. You're sharpened. You're ready, man.
Boom.